Awesome. Now let's welcome our handsome Pastor TJ to talk for today's service.
All right, good morning and happy Sunday, Gem. It's great to be able to share for you once again. It's always a privilege to be able to share the sermon with you guys. And even though I'm not there with you in the live room, it's really amazing that I can still be able to share something from my heart to you guys. It's been a good opportunity for Sonia and I to reconnect with the UK churches and join their Sunday services. So today, Sunday, I'm actually joining the UK church in person, and they're having a conference over the weekend, and the Sunday is the final day of that. So I'll be sharing the communion in the Sunday service. But today I also get to share a sermon, so I can be in two places at once, which is really cool. So I just want to start off by wishing you guys if I share my slides, a happier new year. Yes, a happier new year that I want to wish you guys. As I know for many of us, 2021 was not the greatest of years. It was a year full of challenges, full of disappointments, full of obstacles. And there may have been also some good times as well for many of us. But I do want to wish us a happier 2022. And I believe that this year has great things in store for us as a community. I know I'm cautiously optimistic at the start of the year, given that I was optimistic last year, and now I'm optimistic again. But I genuinely do feel that God has great things in store for us as a ministry and for each of us as individuals too. I think 2022 is going to be a particularly fun year for me because there is a new addition to my family, which is of course little Princess Esme. As many of you guys know, our baby girl was born in December, and she's extremely cute. She's really fun. She's a little bundle of cuteness. She's been sleeping a lot. She's been a really great baby. And I keep telling her about all her aunties and uncles in Gem. And she's really excited to come back to Indonesia to meet all of you guys. And so I can't wait for that. We're looking forward to coming back. We still don't know exactly when due to travel rules. But yeah, we're so excited for you guys to meet Esme. I could probably spend the next half an hour just talking about how cute Esme is, but I don't think most of you would enjoy that. Maybe a couple of you would, perhaps Roz and Wendy would enjoy that. But actually, I'm going to move on, and I'm going to talk about some spiritual things today, which is no surprise because that's what we like to do in Gem. We like to talk about spiritual topics, and that's what you guys like to hear on a Sunday morning, right? We want to come together. We want to talk about spiritual things. That's because we are a Christian community. We're a Christian family, and we're spiritual people, or so we like to say we are. And so the question of, do you want to hear spiritual things? I think is kind of a weird question to ask on a Sunday at church because it's kind of assumed. But actually, I think it really depends on what does it mean to be spiritual, right? What does it mean to be spiritual? That's my opening question for this Sunday morning. And there are very wide definitions of what that could mean in today's culture and context. So maybe you put some answers yourselves in the chat. I can't read them out today because I'm not there live, but put a few answers in the chat. What does it mean to be spiritual? You guys can look through some people's contributions there. What do you think? How would you define that? Perhaps it means to be someone who meditates, right? When you think of someone who talks about meditation, that person's spiritual. Perhaps it means to have self-awareness and to be aware of how small you are in an infinite, vast galaxy, right? Perhaps for others, it means you've been to India and you know how to do yoga, right? Maybe that's being spiritual. There are very many definitions, right, in today's world of what it could mean to be spiritual. And in fact, I believe that a lot of them have quite a bit of truth to them. They have elements of the truth, in that I think being spiritual has a lot to do with how you think about yourself and how you view the world around you. And in a nutshell, perhaps how I would define it is you realize that you are not the center of your universe and your existence. You realize that you are not the one who defines your meaning in life and your purpose, right? You acknowledge that there's an external entity or force that gives you meaning, that gives you purpose. And you're acutely aware of that, and you live your life in accordance with that principle, with that truth. So I think there's some truth that these modern definitions of spirituality have. But if you're a spiritual person, I do believe that there are actually many spiritual people out there who have not yet found the truth in Christ, but are spiritual as people, right? And one of the ways you can identify people like this is that their thoughts transcend just the here and now. They think about things beyond just their life and their circles around them and their existence. One person I always think of was when I was at university in London. I had a friend that I became really close with in a short period of time. And this was a guy by the name of Saif. His name was Saif. He was from Middle Eastern background, so he was spelled Sayf. But he was not from a Christian background. He didn't know the Bible, but he was a spiritual person. Why? Because he would think beyond just his own life and his own interactions with people. He would look beyond the material, and he would search for something deeper beyond that. So at the time when we were first-year students at university, there was a very strong party culture, as there is in the UK for university students. And in the first few weeks of uni, people are just going out, they're drinking, they're trying to have meaningless flings with others. And Saif was someone who felt like that's just meaningless, right? Why do we need to do that? Why do we need to follow the pattern around us when it's so meaningless? It has no depth to it. And so we formed a bond because we both saw things that way. We both felt like there's a certain meaninglessness to the way that people are living their lives around us. So he was thinking beyond the material level. Therefore, I believe he was a spiritual person. Today we're going to be talking about spiritual perspectives and how we can take higher our view of God and what it means to really live a life that is filled by him. So the theme, as you guys know, is higher, right? That's the theme for 2022 as a church, as GKDI. We're going to be running with this theme of higher, and that's the theme that we're using for January. And it comes from Isaiah 55, where it reads, and I'll read it for us. It reads, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." What is God saying over here in Isaiah? He's saying, the way I do things, the way I work, the way I make plans and promises and bring them to fruition, that's different from how you do things. And that's because I don't think the same way that you think. My thoughts are so much higher. The ways that I do things are so much higher than you. And it's not a put down, right? God is not trying to roast the Israelites saying, you guys, your ways suck. You cannot do anything. Your thoughts are filthy. Your thoughts are in the gutter. God is not saying it in that way at all. Because look at the context. Look at how the passage opens up in the start of the chapter in Isaiah 55. It's actually one of the well-known or better-known passages in the book of Isaiah. Let's read that together. Come, this is the start of the chapter. Come, all you who are thirsty. Come to the waters, and you who have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why spend money on what is not bread, and your labor on what does not satisfy? Listen to me and eat what is good, and you will delight in the richest fare. And down in verse 6, seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. So God is not judging them in this passage and saying, you guys are so much below me. That's not what God is doing here. God is actually inviting them. He's saying, come to me. He's inviting them, in other words, to be spiritual. Come to me, not physically, not literally. Don't physically come to me, because we cannot do that. But bring your thoughts to me. Bring your heart to me. Align your life and your goals towards mine. Why are you wasting your energy? Why are you wasting your thoughts? Why are you wasting your resources on things that are not ultimately going to satisfy you? They're not going to fill you. It's an invitation from God to be spiritual. and to see what truly satisfies you. My talk today, my sermon today, therefore, is called Higher Ways, Higher Thoughts, because this is what God is inviting us to actually incorporate into our lives. He wants us to see the ways in which he works are so much greater than the ways that we would operate. And the way that he thinks is so much deeper. And therefore, we too should take our thoughts higher. Let's start with higher ways. And the question that I want to ask us is, how do you face opposition in your life? How do you face opposition? You know, facing opposition, I believe, is an inevitable part of life. We will all face some kind of opposition, some kind of challenge, some kind of pushback in our lives. I mean, the prophet Isaiah, the one who's writing the passage that we're studying out this month, he himself faced a huge amount of opposition from the people that he was trying to help. The more that he preached God's word to them, the more their hearts hardened. But God actually had a plan through that. God had a way that he was working, even through that seemingly apparent failure in Isaiah's prophetic career. How do you face opposition? Take a moment to think about that. Think about a person in your life. Maybe think about a situation in your life where you faced some opposition. Somehow I always think back to my school days when I think of examples of things. But I do remember when I was at boarding school, I think in my second year of boarding school, probably about 14, there was a boy in my house who was supposed to be a friend of mine, who ended up spreading rumors about me. These were, embarrassing rumors about me that were not true and were inappropriate. And he started telling the boys in the school, he started telling the cleaning staff as well, who would kind of come around the school and talk to us, that were meant to be kind of our friends who were not the teachers. And he started spreading these rumors, and it was embarrassing and it was shameful and it was not true. And I felt so angry. I was like, what is he doing? Why is he trying to bring me down? Why is he trying to destroy me? I didn't do anything to him. And in my heart, I was burning with anger. I was already coming up with a plan of how I'm going to take this guy down. He thinks he can mess with me. He wants to try and dirty my name. Well, look what I'm going to do to him. And I started plotting my evil plan. But I was seriously thinking about trying to take revenge on him. And as I was plotting, he ended up being caught probably within a week or two of that incident of him spreading the rumors. He ended up being caught with marijuana just outside the school grounds. And he ended up being effectively expelled from school. I think they asked him to leave, which is a polite way of expelling someone. Now, I don't know if that was God's intervention or whether that was him just reaping what he's sown, but it certainly felt to me like God's way was higher than my way. I was ready to take action. I was ready to execute my evil plan. But God had a way of working to remove him from the situation and to teach him a lesson that didn't involve my selfishness and my evil and my ego, right? But sometimes when we face opposition, we do want to take things into our own hands. We want to fix it ourselves. We want to start coming up with a plan that we're going to put into action before we've even consulted anyone else or God himself. And very quickly, we are straying into dangerous territory. We don't even think about what would God do in this situation. What is God trying to teach me? If I were to ask God, what would he tell me to do? And so often we just end up acting on impulse out of our own response and reaction. There's a great example in the Gospels that I really like. And it's this kind of interaction between Jesus and the disciples, and it's in Luke chapter 9. And I'll read this for us. As the time approached for him to be taken up to heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem, and he sent messengers on ahead who went into a Samaritan village to get things ready for him. But the people there did not welcome him because he was heading for Jerusalem. When the disciples James and John saw this, they asked, Lord, do you want us to call fire down from heaven to destroy them? But Jesus turned and rebuked them. The Samaritans, of course, were the rivals of the Jews, and they were not happy that there were Jews coming in and heading to Jerusalem. There was a lot of tension between Samaria and the surrounding region of Israel. And so when the disciples were passing through there and they saw how the locals were treating Jesus or treating them, look at what they turned and said to Jesus. Jesus, let's destroy them. Let's let's burn these people up. And it seems so easy for us to just laugh and to dismiss the disciples like, man, these guys were crazy. Like, how could they say that in front of Jesus? How could they even think that? But isn't it true that when we face opposition, when people don't treat us the way we want them to, we can start coming up with our own ways of dealing with the situation? Maybe it's not literally calling down fire to burn someone up, but maybe it's, let me figure out a way to avoid this person. Let me figure out a way to take this person out of my life, right? Or let me figure out a way to fix this issue using means that are not necessarily righteous. It's so easy that we can fall into that way of wanting to solve the opposition that we see in front of us. The disciples here, they felt they had a sense of entitlement to bring judgment on others just because they were walking with Jesus. We don't get that right as disciples. Just because we walk with Jesus doesn't mean we have the right or the power to bring down judgment on others. Jesus was, of course, right to turn around and rebuke them. What do you think Jesus was thinking when he saw this from his disciples, when he heard this? Have they learned nothing? They've been walking with me for so long. Have they got nothing from me? Frustration, I'm sure. But also, he was probably thinking about Isaiah 55. My ways are so much higher than your ways. My thoughts are so much higher than your thoughts, as high as the heavens are above the earth. My ways of doing things are just so much higher. If you could just see that, if you could just grasp that, then maybe you too would start looking at things the way that I look at things. A big part of 2021 for me personally, and for Sonia, my wife, was anxiety over whether we can travel, to see family, being stuck in Indonesia with borders closing. At one point, we were not sure if we would be able to come to the UK to give birth here for the new baby, and to be able to see our family who we hadn't seen in a year and a half. The border closed at one point while we were in Indonesia. We prayed and it opened and we were able to travel without needing to quarantine. And the funny thing is, now we're in the UK looking to come back. Guess what's happened now? The border's closed again. And so right now we cannot even travel back to Jakarta, and we don't know when it's going to open. I'm sure it will open at some point soon. But there's a big part of me over the course of the last year, and even recently on this trip here in the UK, that I have to be honest, I've been feeling so frustrated and so worried about this whole COVID situation and travel and borders, and not to mention people's health and people catching COVID. And in the past few weeks before Christmas, we were meant to have Christmas dinner with my whole family, and my sister got COVID, and then my mother got COVID, so we couldn't do Christmas with my family. Fortunately, we did have a New Year's Eve party after everyone had isolated, which was great. But there's a big part of me over the course of these last few months and weeks that I've just been wanting to give up on everything and just not look at the future, just not look at making plans, just forget about my whole life in Indonesia, and just say, you know what, maybe I should just bag everything and just stay here. And that is, of course, not what I want to do. And I know you guys hopefully wouldn't want me to do that either. I have every intention of returning to Jakarta. But with this whole situation, it's just made me want to just give up on everything. And sometimes when we face opposition, rather than wanting to attack and bring destruction, sometimes we just want to give up. We just want to surrender in a way that we feel like, is it really worth it? Is there any point to this? And that's a big challenge that I've been facing. But the other thing that I've had to really learn through this, and this has been a powerful lesson for me, is that sometimes we need to change the way we look at things before the things we look at will change. I don't know if you've heard that before. I feel like you might have. I feel like that's possibly something Ambudi shared in a sermon. But with the pandemic, we cannot change it. It's here. It's perhaps here to stay. I hope not, but we can't change it. We can't influence that. But what I can change is the way that I look at it. I can work on being surrendered in the sense of really learning to lean into God and to make my prayer life much more helpful for me personally so that I don't get controlled by what's going on around me. Sometimes we need to change the way we look at things before the things we look at can change. At the end of every year, this is a tradition for me personally that I like to do. I make a reflection over the past year, and I reflect on what I'm grateful for in that whole year, and I go through everything that I've been grateful for. But then I also reflect on what have I learned? What have I learned? What lessons have I learned that past year? And when I do that, it really reminds me of the ways that God has been working that have been so much higher than the ways that I would have handled things or the ways that I would have expected things to have worked. It reminds me of who God is. It reminds me of the little miracles. And it just brings me back to that faith and to that surrender that I need to arrive at. And this process can take me hours to do this. It takes me hours. Sometimes I do it over several days. But it helps me to make the right meaning of what's happened that year and the lessons, the valuable lessons that I've learned. The truth is that we all need to live surrendered lives. When we face opposition, the goal is not to attack and to destroy. It's actually to surrender. And not to surrender in the sense that, okay, we give up, we don't do anything, and we are inviting the situation to defeat us, and we become a victim. That's not what I'm talking about in terms of the word surrender here. Surrendering really means I've done my best. I've done what I can up to the limits of what I can control. And I acknowledge that only God can make this happen or not. Therefore, the best thing that I can do is actually get deeper in prayer with him, with the one who is in control. COVID really should have taught me this by now. But I have to question myself, am I really holding on to this lesson from the past year? That God's ways are so much higher, and the best thing I can do is to actually surrender to him. I was recommended this really great book, which I've told the brothers about, but essentially it's called 40 Days of Prayer and Having a Spiritual Breakthrough in 7 Steps. And one of those 7 steps is to create a impossible prayer list, 10 impossible prayers. And it's been an incredible experience just thinking about if I were to write down 10 impossible prayers, if you like 10 impossible dreams, what would those be? List them out. And there's a part of you which is thinking, this is impossible. This is not going to happen. Well, that's the exercise. That's the point of what he's saying here. Write them down. And then he challenges you to get up every morning, and the first thing you do, even if it's just for a few seconds, is get on your knees and just pray. Thank God for the day and pray a little bit about 1 or 2 of these impossible prayers. There's a few other steps he recommends which are really helpful, and I love this. And I'm doing the devotionals from this book now. And if you want to also join in and you feel like you need a spiritual breakthrough through the power of prayer, then you can message me, and I will tell you how to get this ebook. It's written by a guy called Kit Cummings, who is from our Atlanta church in America, and I think it's been really helpful so far. So my second point, which I'm going to quickly share on, is higher thoughts. We've talked about higher ways, we talked about surrender, and now I want to talk a little bit about higher thoughts. I was reading this BBC article that was shared with me, and it's about the power and impact of being in awe. And there's a professor called Ethan Kross, who's a professor of psychology at the University of Michigan, and he's done some research on the impact of basically awe, of being in awe. And he found that it has an incredible impact on us. Let's read a little bit here. It says, because most of us only experience awe sporadically, we remain unaware of its benefits. When we're feeling down, we may be more likely to look for light relief in comedy, for instance, seeking feelings of amusement that are not nearly so powerful. Yet generating awe can trigger a great mental shift, making it a potentially essential tool to improve our health and well-being. I found this so interesting that research is being done on how being in awe, just finding moments when you are in awe, can actually help you to have better memory, can help you to be more creative, helps you to be more giving, selfless, and generous. Isn't that so interesting? Let's read a bit more from this article in the BBC. Awe's most transformative effects may concern the way we view ourselves. When we feel wonder at something truly incredible and grand, we perceive ourselves as smaller and less significant in relation to the rest of the world, says Shiota, who's another professor at Arizona State University, one of these pioneering basically research into the impact of awe on people. One consequence of this is greater altruism. When I am less focused on myself, on my own goals and needs and the thoughts in my head, I have more bandwidth to notice you and what you may be experiencing. And I just love that. I find that so interesting. Another team at the University of California at Irvine, I think Jeffrey from the US went there. A third of these participants in this research project about awe were asked to watch a 5-minute video of planet Earth. David Attenborough, incredible shots of the Earth, canyons, mountains, animals, all of that incredible stuff on planet Earth. Another third watched just funny YouTube animal videos, maybe a cat jumping over a door or something. And then the remaining third watched really neutral videos about DIY, like hammering a nail into a block of wood. Then the participants were asked to do a questionnaire where they rated the extent to which they agree about certain statements about themselves. For example, I feel the presence of something greater than myself. They rank it. How much do I agree with that? I feel small and insignificant. They rank it. How much do they agree with that? Then they were asked to take part in a game called the Dictator Game, where you're given a resource of 10 tickets, and you can exchange those 10 tickets for a $100 voucher. And you're given the option to share certain tickets with your partners in the game. And from both of these tests, from the questions about yourselves and from the game about basically your selflessness, they actually found that being in awe produced a significant change in the way that they saw themselves and how generous they actually were to others. Let's read the final extract from this article. The feelings of awe produced a significant change in their generosity, increasing the number of tickets that the participants shared with their partners. Through subsequent statistical analyses, the researchers were able to show that this came through the changes to the sense of self. The smaller the participants felt, the more generous they were. Just from watching a video about how grand and wide the universe is. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that. Have you ever been in a place in nature where you felt how small you are in comparison with the universe? Last time I felt a really powerful sense of that was when I was traveling in Australia in my gap year before university. And there was the most incredible night sky of stars. And it was one of the most amazing starry skies that I'd ever seen, the clearest, the most crystal clear, with the greatest number of stars and Milky Way and everything. And I felt that sense of awe. But the funny thing is our quiet times and our reflection times actually should leave us with this same feeling of awe. Do they do that for you? I know they won't always be like this. I know it's not always going to be that way. For me, it's not always that way. Sometimes I really struggle to feel that sense of awe. But are you on a journey of trying to get to that place where you feel that sense of awe to God after you've read his word, after you've meditated on it, after you've prayed? Is your quiet time functioning like that telescope that we see here? giving you a view, just a little picture towards who God is, his ways, and his thoughts, and leaving you silently in awe of who he is. Think of the impact that that would have in your life. Think of how it would change your perspective. To be able to have quiet times like that, how much smaller would your problems seem? How much easier would it feel and be to just be more generous and to give more to others when you have that sense of awe of who God is? You know, when we're not doing well spiritually, I believe it's not because we are feeling lazy or we're feeling tired. I believe when we are feeling weak spiritually, when we don't feel like giving to others, when we feel like being selfish, it's not because we're lazy. It's not because we're tired. It's because God is not that awesome to us. We are not in awe of him anymore. We are not seeing him the way he should be seen. We are not relating to him the way he wants to be related to. We've become tired, yes. Things have become routine, sure. But we are not striving to be in a place of awe with God. The Bible, oh yeah, okay, I'll open it, I'll read something, but it's just a process that I need to do to tick off a box. The Old Testament, oh please, don't make me read that again. Where's that sense of awe for who God is? Can you find that again? Can you get yourself to a place where God is that awesome? I love it in the Psalms, in the chapter 8, where the psalmist writes this: when I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, the son of man that you care for him? In other words, when I see how vast the universe is, when I see that we are one planet in a galaxy of 400 billion stars, and I'm one person in a population of 7 or 8 billion people, who am I that you care so much for me? And he's essentially in awe of God's ways, of who God is, of how he sees him. Can you get yourself to that place in your own reflections with God? I'm going to close it up now. Many of us have made resolutions for 2022. Maybe we want to be healthier. Maybe we want to be happier. Maybe we want to be richer. We're going to be having a Gem Talk on the 19th of January. Wednesday the 19th will be our first Gem Talk. Myself and Jame are going to be talking about making resolutions and making godly decisions. And it's good to have goals. You know, there's nothing wrong with making these kind of goals. But I wonder, have we thought about resolutions for having higher thoughts, for being more in awe of God? I love this passage in Colossians where Paul says, since then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things, for you died and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. Can we set our hearts and our minds more on things above? What might those things be? What are these things Paul's talking about? Well, maybe it's your spiritual well-being, your relationship with God and how you see him. Maybe it's other people's physical and spiritual well-being, and you're setting your mind and thinking about that more. Maybe it's about helping the needy around you. Maybe you know of people that are needy and you start thinking of them more. Maybe it's about building new relationships, reaching out to people that you know in your circle you could strengthen a relationship with and have a positive impact. Maybe it's mending some broken relationships in your family or in your friendships or in your friends' friendships. And it's trying to be a source of unity over there. Whatever it is, let's take our thoughts higher, and let's take our reflection on God's ways higher. I hope that from today we've learned that God's ways are indeed much higher than ours, and that should lead us to be more surrendered to him, to have deeper prayer to him. And finally, let's take our own thinking higher, to be in awe of him more. And that should lead us to be more giving and more selfless. Thank you guys for the time. I'm going to quickly close in a word of prayer, and hope you have a great Sunday, and hope to speak to and see you guys soon. Let's